What's up guys, Dare here with Fantasy Football Advice, coming at you with a quick video on Sammy Watkins. Now I'm not going to say he's the most asked about player of the offseason because I think the consensus is just don't touch him. At least that's what most people are thinking. Where some people see trouble, some people see value. We're here to give you all the information on Sammy Watkins so you can make your own decision. Before we jump into the video though, just gotta shout out the Facebook group because there are only 20 spots left. That's right, 20 spots. We weren't expecting to fill up until at least July, but we're already full, so get in right now. You're going to be one of the last. That's enough about that. Let's get into Sammy Watkins. The first thing that we have to talk about is Sammy Watkins' injury history. Sammy Watkins, unlike other players, has had an injury history that dates all the way back into college in 2011, his freshman year at Clemson. It started with a shoulder AC joint sprain, and that was the only injury that he had on the season, so it wasn't looking too bad. Coming into 2012, his sophomore campaign, he did start to have some of those lower body issues with a grade 1 ankle sprain, but 2013 he really came into his own. This was the season right before he got drafted. He was drafted in 2014. His final year in college with no injuries, he had 101 receptions for 1,464 yards and 12 touchdowns. Now, we all know where that landed him. He was the first wide receiver taken as the Buffalo Bills moved up to get him in the draft. Everything was looking good. That was a full year without injuries coming into his 2014 rookie season. He did experience some injuries, but he did play a full 16 games. He had 2 rib injuries, 1 grade 1 groin pull, and the bad one, which was a torn labrum in his hip, and during the offseason that required surgery. Now, while he didn't crack the 1,000 yard mark as a rookie receiver, he did have a respectable 65 receptions for 982 yards and 6 touchdowns. And remember, he had terrible quarterback play that entire year. Now in 2015, his sophomore campaign, he played 13 games. He had a glute strain, a calf strain, and a sprained ankle that took him out of 2 games. He racked up 60 receptions for 1,047 yards and 9 touchdowns. Very respectable numbers, but as you can see, the injuries continue to pile on year over year. The sprained ankle that he already had earlier in 2012 seems to be a recurring thing with him. Now 2016, this is where it all fell apart. This was the nightmare year where he only played in 8 games. He fractured his foot in preseason, had surgery, had a screw inserted, and was out for 8 games. When he came back, he just wasn't the same. He also incurred a foot bruise throughout the season as well. He finished that campaign 28 receptions, 430 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now we come into the 2017 offseason, and it's already talked about how he had his second foot surgery to repair the same injured foot. So what is this foot injury? What is holding Sammy Watkins back right now? Well, this injury is actually a little more common than you think. It's called a Jones fracture. Many players have actually had this injury and have came back successfully. Hakeem Nicks had this injury in 2012. He had surgery, came back to play 15 straight games. Marvin Jones came back after missing the entire 2014 season. He played full 16 games as soon as he came back. Now, what's even more eerily similar is the play with Dez Bryant and Julian Edelman, both suffering from the same injury. Edelman, as we know, he came back in 2015 from this injury. He went out mid-November and came back in the playoffs 2 months later. His first game back, he had 10 receptions for 100 yards, then followed that up with 7 receptions for 53 yards. Clearly, he wasn't limited at all. He went on to then play 16 straight games in 2016, and we all know he took home a nice ring to show for it. So I know the concern mostly is the fact that now he's having the second surgery, right? But surprisingly, it's shown that having a second follow-up surgery on this injury, if it's giving you problems, is the way to go. Both Dez Bryant and Edelman also had follow-up surgeries on the initial one. Now, don't associate Sammy Watkins and Dez and Edelman's injuries on their foot with Julio Jones' injuries. He has nagging foot injuries that carry over year, but they are different injuries than this one. So that shouldn't be the same problem with Watkins. If he does get hurt, odds are it could be the foot, but there's a strong chance he would probably be taken out for another reason. Here's the thing. We can get behind drafting Watkins. He truly does have top 5 upside. The risk is what it is. One thing is for sure, though, you definitely can't take Watkins as your number 1. That's just too much risk. So if you go running back heavy in the early rounds and you take Watkins as your number 1, you're really going to end up screwing yourself. There is an opportunity where taking Watkins makes sense, though. There are a ton of mid-round receivers that can be starting material. Check out the video we did earlier on this week on taking running backs early or taking wide receivers early, and it really outlines the value of these mid-round receivers. In theory, you could take Watkins in the late 3rd, early 4th, and still be able to balance out your receiving core with some of these mid-round guys. For example, if you could draft a team like Jordy Nelson in the 1st, DeMarco Murray in the 2nd, Watkins and Crowell, depending on how the ADP pans out, could be solid 3rd and 4th round picks. Then to balance out your receiving core, you could take some high floor receivers in the 5th and 6th round. Some examples of players that are out there, Crowder and Diggs, they're definitely out in that range, and you could even grab Snead in the later rounds after that. So what happened, Sammy Watkins really wasn't productive last year. He complained about soreness since the start of the 2016 season, so his per game averages last year were not a good representation of his actual value. The medical consensus came out, and it was that he couldn't do any more structural damage to his foot while he was on the field, and whether or not he played actually came down to a pain tolerance and conditioning. So essentially, if he could play, then he's going to be out on the field. And we all know how it is in the NFL. You're hurt all the time. Everyone's got a little pain here and there. If you're healthy, you're getting on the field. And technically, the doctor said he could play, so he played. Even though he wasn't, in his prime, they were putting him out there, and they needed him. They played much better when he was on the field. All you need to know, though, is that in 2015, when Watkins was healthy, he averaged 16.8 points per game through 13 games. That average would have been good for wide receiver 6, right behind T.Y. Hilton. In 2015, when healthy, projected through 16 games, he would have had 74 receptions for 1,288 yards and 11 touchdowns. That's the kind of upside you could get from Watkins, especially if he's coming back healthy. The Buffalo Bills did not pick up his 5th-year option. This is a contract year for Watkins. This is make or break it. No one's going to pay an injured wide receiver. He's going to want to play all these games. So far in camp, Watkins has already been doing individual drills and team drills. During mandatory minicamp, he was logging in first team reps on 11-on-11s. So all that is sounding really good. You definitely have to monitor his health. If he is healthy through training camp and preseason, you could be getting a solid value on Watkins. Don't get us wrong though, this is not a public service announcement to say go out and draft Watkins. He carries too much risk to own in every league, but it's all about balancing out your roster. If you can balance out your roster, there are plenty of teams that Sammy Watkins would be a good fit in. Take a look at the video we posted on balancing your draft picks. It'll really help you in understanding where this fits in. Currently, ESPN has Watkins ranked at wide receiver 18. We have him at wide receiver 20. The thing is, we really don't see his value increasing from there. So I think as it comes closer to the start of the season, you may even see a greater value in him. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. I hope that leaves you some insight on Sammy Watkins. If you have any questions on him, please let us know in the comments section down below. If you like this video, toss it a big thumbs up, and we'll catch you on the next one.